coming. Appreciate it.
All right. We're going to take a seat here. All right, ready? Go.
All right.
Just kidding. Just kidding. So thank you very much for coming today. I've got a lot of paperwork and a lot of questions for you, but I know that we're gonna kind of meander. So hang with us here. It's gonna come all back. But yeah, just let's dive in about innovation first, because this is Innovate and Celebrate, and I want to make sure that we understand your thoughts on innovation.
So I think we are living in absolutely the most amazing times in the human history. The next 10 years are going to fundamentally change the trajectory of how humanity lives. And here's the best part. All the innovation and all the disruption and all of the wonderful things are going to be coming out of the things that you are doing, that everyone around you is doing. And the reason for that is the cost of the technology is coming down really, really fast. And these exponential technologies, many of them are converging together at the knee of the curve. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what's happening there and what technologies that at this point are so ripe that we can apply many of them to solve some of the biggest problems, which happen to be the biggest opportunity for any entrepreneur. So everything that used to be in the domain of the Fortune 500 companies or even the superpowers can now be done by a small group of people. And that, to me, is really the key of how the world is changing, how innovation and entrepreneurship is solving some of the most vexing problems facing humanity. And I think the power is in our hand, and it's no longer in the hands of the government or the large companies. And if I may venture to say that, I think the 40% or 50% of the Fortune 500 companies will not be around in the next 10 years.
Wow.
And it's going to be one of you that's going to disrupt it.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the innovations that could happen. So like I'd love to get your thoughts just on maybe kind of highly regulated spaces. So like, let's talk about education first.
Sure. So I mean, I think the best way to really look at this stuff and see what are the technologies that are on the exponential curve and are absolutely ready for prime time. And then let's look at how do we apply these set of technologies and what are the industries that are absolutely ripe for disruption. And what are the biggest problems, and if you can apply the right set of technology, that you can create an amazing, amazing enterprise. So to me, let's start with a fundamental fact that if you want to create a billion-dollar company, it is really, really easy.
It is.
All you have to do is solve a $10 billion problem. I mean, it's really not much, right? And the good thing is the problems that you're talking about, whether it's in education or healthcare or fresh water or agriculture, all of these problems are not just $10 billion problems. They're $100 billion or even $10 trillion problems.
Big, big problems.
Massive, massive problems. And the solutions actually exist today. So many of the technologies that we need to solve these problems actually do exist. What's lacking is the spirit of entrepreneurship and someone putting these things together to solve these problems.
Right.
So I'm going to actually answer your question more specifically.
Okay.
So what are the set of technologies that are absolutely available right now? So every single thing that's making our iPhones better, faster, thinner, cheaper are the sensors, right? So in your pocket, what you're carrying, that iPhone, in fact, has more processing power than the computer that landed the man on the moon.
Wow.
So think about that. It has now access to more information through Google than the President Clinton had as a president.
Wow.
Now, the sensors that are on that phone would have been worth over $1 million just 10 years ago. So think about all the things that you're carrying.
$1 million phone, basically.
$1 million phone 10 years ago. So when people talk about that, this gloom and doom and how the world is falling apart, in fact, the world is today better than it has ever been. The definition of poverty keeps changing. The richest person 40 years ago could not afford the things that the poorest person can afford today. So it's mind-boggling to me that why people talk about the doom and gloom. And the only reason people talk about the doom and gloom is they take advantage of our brain. So as we evolved as humans, imagine we were living in the jungle. And every single time, if we missed the bad news, what happens? We got wiped out of the gene pool, right? So what happened is our brain, the primitive part of our brain called amygdala, is especially tuned for everything negative. If something negative happens, we are paying attention, and amygdala is constantly looking around for the negative news.
Right.
Media figured that out. So if it bleeds, it leads. Oh my God. The CNN, let's call that a crisis news network. The one crisis after the crisis.
Yeah.
They cannot get enough crisis out there.
Gets our attention, that's for sure,
And
right?
that gets your attention, right?
Yeah.
But what's really happening is world is becoming a better place. So if you start to think about how would we go solve education. So fundamentally as an entrepreneur, you have to think about what problem are we solving and what exactly is the education problem.
Right.
So most people will say, well, you know, our education system is seriously broken and it really needs fixing. Right? How many people believe that? At least some of you.
Yeah.
The problem you have is actually our education system is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It has simply become obsolete. Our needs have changed. So if you go back a couple of 100 years ago, our education system was designed for the time where somebody could learn certain skills and apply those skills for the rest of their life in a productive job.
Right.
Now, every skill that you learn today become obsolete in 5 to 10 years because of these exponential technologies. So learning skills is no longer the game. Education system no longer needs to be teaching skills. What it really needs to be doing is teaching you learning to learn and learning to solve problems. And understanding that most problems are not a unidisciplinary problem. They're interdisciplinary problem, and multiple disciplines have to come together to solve a problem, and it requires a cooperative approach. So let's look at the current education system, how it works. When you ask your person, when you're taking an exam, ask your neighbor and say, hey, what do you think is the right answer here? You know what they call? They call that cheating. Right? In the real world, we call that a teamwork, right?
Yeah, collaboration.
Collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. Yeah. If you get someone to do your job better than you can, we call that a leadership. Right? In education, we
delegation.
call that delegation, the leadership. In education, we call that cheating.
Right.
You're getting someone else to do your work. Well, that's what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Because they are much better at it than we are.
Right.
So that's my point is we have to start thinking about education very, very differently. So what needs to be done? It needs to be adaptive. That means the education system needs to adapt to the learner. That means how a person learns. So it can be, if I learn experimentally, if I learn graphically, if I learn different ways, the education system needs to adapt to me. It needs to change from a fixed time variable learning to fixed learning variable time. So what I mean by that is today we have this semester system. You get 6 months, and it doesn't matter whether you learn a lot, you get an A, you learn a little, you get C, and you move on to the next thing. What if it's like a video game? You do not get to the level 2 until you master the level 1. And it doesn't matter whether it takes you 3 days, 3 months, or 3 years. You master one level and you go to the next level. So it's a fixed learning variable time.
Right.
It needs to be gamified. It needs to be collaborative. It needs to be really, as opposed to being a sage on the stage, you learn everything before you come to the class, and the teacher becomes a coach that essentially says, how do we solve this problem? And you take a group and start to solve different problems using different technologies.
So more experiential.
More and more experiential, and that is to me is and learning to learn. You no longer have to remember the information. You just need to remember the keywords that you need to type on the Google to get the information, because all the information is at your fingertips now. So why bother about learning all that information? Our brain is extremely limited. So if I can just do slightly tangent here, the biggest change in the humanity evolved about 100,000 years ago when we developed the prefrontal cortex, just a little bit of neocortex. And as humans, we neither the fastest nor the strongest, but we became on the top of the species food chain because we have this brain, especially this extra neocortex. Now imagine what if we can extend this neocortex by merging our brain with the cloud, and we have unlimited neocortex. So imagine what happens. We are already doing that. So if I asked you to tell you your own phone number, probably half the people in this room couldn't remember their own phone number.
Or
you know
your wife's
why?
phone number or anybody's phone number.
Exactly, because you augmented your brain to the cloud using your iPhone.
Right.
The information is constantly being augmented, so we're already being used to it. And it's only a matter of time till you start to have your body full of sensors. So imagine if you have nanobots in your body, so I'm going to healthcare, how to solve healthcare problems. So think about what healthcare diagnostic is. Today our healthcare is primarily not even a healthcare, it's not even a disease care, it's actually the symptom care system. You go to the doctor, I have a headache, they give you a pill to stop you feeling the headache, not cure the headache, just so you don't feel it, that's it. Right? The drug companies, when you are sick, their job is not to cure you, because if you get cured, their annuity stops. They can't make money. And if you die, they don't make money. So what's their job? Keeping you alive long enough just to keep them paying money. Right?
Sounds terrible.
Right? Sounds terrible, right? But that's what it is. So what if you fundamentally change the diagnostics so that you can essentially know even before you're going to fall sick? And one of the things that are happening is the technology is giving us all the things we needed. So let me tell you some of the very interesting things that I have been learning about healthcare. Do we know that we as humans, less than 10% of our cells in our body are our own. 90% of the cells in our body are bacterial cells, the microbes.
Wow.
So imagine, our DNA only produces about 20,000 genes, and these bacteria, they produce 10 million genes.
Wow.
So who is controlling who? So if you're really proud of who you are, let me tell you, you're a beautiful container for parasites. That's who we are, right? So now imagine, why did nature do that? Nature is pretty smart. It figured, why end up doing all the work yourself when we can create the humans, which are nothing but an ecosystem. And that ecosystem has all these microbes actually helping it do what it needs to do. So our DNA, our genes, don't know how to digest fiber, but microbes do. So they have the microbial system in your gut that digests the fiber. In return, it gives you the vitamins, it gives you the nutrients.
Right. So
what happens is the ecosystem evolved that says, hey, we do certain things, you do certain things, and we will feed you, in turn you feed us. So that became a symbiotic relationship, and that's how we all evolved. So imagine, 90% of the diseases that we know are actually caused by the imbalance of microbiome in your body. And your host system, the immune system, responds to it. So what if you can control your microbes simply through diet and lifestyle? And if you do that, imagine all the diseases, the symptoms may be different, but the underlying cause is the same. So in some people, exactly the symptom may show up as depression or anxiety or obesity or high blood pressure, but they all are basically the imbalance of the microbial colonies, the richness of microbial colonies, and the immune system response to how hygienic you are. So the allergies and eczemas are not they are first world problem, they are not the third world problem. Because we become too hygienic. We are no longer in one with the nature. When something drops on the floor, we don't eat it. You know what? That's not what the nature intended. Nature wanted all those microbes inside you so they can build a symbiotic relationship. So if it falls on the floor, pick it up and call it a microbiome enhanced food.
I love that. That's awesome.
Right? But then, so my point is, now you have the technology like sequencing, and the cost of sequencing is coming down so fast. The first human genome sequencing cost us $1 billion. And now you can sequence the full genome in under $1,000, and it's dropping down to $100. Wow. You can start to do the whole microbe.
$100?
$100.
Wow.
And you're able to do the full microbiome sequencing for less than $50.
Wow.
Right? You can start to do the type of things that you want, the metabolic test, how the immune system is working, for less than $10. And these type of things, and now you have unlimited computing power at the cloud. You have unlimited bandwidth. The cost of computing is zero. The cost of storage is marginally zero. And all the sensors are coming down in price. what happens? The healthcare diagnostic is absolutely ripe for disruption. You can have a non-invasive way of detecting the pre-diabetes and control it before you ever have it, right? You can control
health.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not even about good health.
Yeah.
People don't want good health. Can you believe that? What they want is a good life. And that is the distinction.
Right.
When you go to someone and say, don't smoke because it's bad for your health, you know what they say? I love smoking. I don't care about someday what happens. I want to live a good life today.
Right.
What if you tell the people the smoking cigarette makes you impotent? They drop the damn cigarette on a heartbeat.
Yep.
Right. The point is they want to live a good life. And what you do is provide the technologies that allows them to live a good life through good health. But not other way around. Don't give them a good health if they can't enjoy life. So give up your carbs, give up everything, and you will live a long time. And most people will say, why bother living, right?
Right. Speaking of that,
right.
Let's transition and talk about something I think people have been
Sure.
waiting to hear about.
Let's do that.
Let's talk about the moon.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
Moon Express, how that got started?
Sure. So think about it. I'm going to talk about the world peace, and I'm going to talk about the moon in a second here. So, how do we as an entrepreneur create world peace, right?
Right.
So here's how I think we can create world peace. Think about what do we fight over. So if you think about all the fight and the wars,
Space.
they are about land,
Yeah.
they're about water,
Yeah.
and they're about energy.
Yep.
And all you have to do is look up. There is abundance of land, there is abundance of water, and there is abundance of energy, right? Only thing we have to do is make it accessible. So what if you could realize that living on the moon is no different than living in Australia, and it is going to be as cheap or even better with great neighborhood, right? With great views and
Great views.
right? And
That's
you
right.
could live on the moon or the Mars or anywhere else just as easily, right? What if all the water that you need is available to you without having to carry it, because we know the moon has plenty of water, and there is an abundance of water in space. Energy. Imagine all the energy that falls on just our own planet. In the 1.5 hour, every single 1.5 hour, we have more energy falling on this earth just from our own sun than we use in the entire year.
Wow.
All we have to do is simply harness it. It is the same problem that we had if you go back to the time of Napoleon. And I'm going to give you a very short story about how technology changes everything. Napoleon hosted a king of Siam, and he wanted to show him how rich he is. So what he did is, he fed all the generals with the gold platter. He fed all their troops in the silver platter. But the king of Siam would have nothing less than the aluminum platter. It was the most rare material. Even though it is abundance on earth, but it's never in the pure form. It was in the form of bauxite. It was so expensive, so rare, that the Washington Monument, the tip of the Washington Monument, is made out of aluminum. We wanted to show to the Britishers, we have arrived. We are the rich country. We're going to put the aluminum on the top of our Washington Monument.
Wow.
And then the technology called electrolysis came about. And electrolysis made extracting the aluminum from bauxite so easy that we throw it away. Now imagine, that means the problem is simply building the right set of technologies for us to be making it accessible. So cost of going to the moon used to be $1 billion.
Yeah.
We are launching a mission to the moon next year, not someday,
Wait, so just
next year.
Wow.
And our cost of going to the moon, the unmanned lander, is under $10 million.
Wow.
Right. That cost in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be under $1 million. And I can believe you.
So cheaper than my $1 million phone.
Exactly. So imagine what's happening is these things are coming down for many, many reasons. The cost of the rockets are coming down so fast that you can't believe it. And here's why. The rockets used to cost several $100 million. Elon brought the cost down to $70 million. And we thought, oh, we can
So
use
Elon Musk brought
Elon,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Now we have companies that are 3D printing the rockets, and there's a company called Rocket Lab that we are using. It cost us $4 million.
Wow.
Now the people are building the rockets for $1 million. And by the time we are even launched, there's going to be rockets somebody's going to be launching for $100,000. And here's why.
Pretty soon, everyone's going to have their own rocket.
And honestly, that's what's happening because you can 3D print these rockets and you make them reusable, and the cost is simply the cost of the fuel.
Wow.
Right?
So
And
fuel,
that's it. And what if you don't even have to carry all the fuel? Because in a rocket, 97% of the weight is
the fuel. Yeah.
But what if you don't use the fuel? You can refuel yourself on the way. So
How
you
would you
only
do that?
bringing the fuel from moon.
Oh.
So you take the water. What is the water? Hydrogen, oxygen.
Yep.
Rocket fuel, fuel for humanity.
Yep.
And you start to put the rocket fuel on the Earth orbit and the moon orbits instead of taking, instead of refuel yourself on the way. Don't carry all the fuel.
So we're gonna do this next year? Is that what you said?
Yeah. No, my point is, imagine what we're doing.
Yeah.
We want. So people ask me all the time, hey, when you go there, how much are you going to bring back? What are you going to bring back? And my question is, look, okay, I'll tell you all the things, but would you let me enjoy when the minute we land on the moon, we become the 4th superpower? Let me enjoy that. Not only we become the first company ever to land on the moon, it's not the Germany or the France or UK, a small group of people become the 4th superpower.
Right.
Think about that.
That's crazy. I mean,
it is so inspiring. The landing on the moon is not about landing on the moon. It is showing what you and I are capable of doing. So imagine my journey coming to United States with $5 in my pocket, growing up with no food to eat. And if I can dream so big that I can dream and make it happen to go to the moon, what will you do? There is nothing that's impossible. All that means is, do you have a mindset of scarcity or do you have a mindset of abundance? If you believe something is impossible, it becomes impossible for you, not for someone else, right? So just dream so big that people think you are absolutely crazy. Unless you happen to be crazy, in that case, all bets are off. Right? And never be afraid to fail. As an entrepreneur, you never fail. You pivot, right? Every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a bigger idea and a bigger success. So keep changing, keep learning, and until you give up, you have not failed, right? So to me, going to the moon is symbolic of what we can do. It is like a 4-minute a mile problem. No human ran a mile under 4 minutes until the first person showed it could be done. Right. And the 13 people did that a year later. Right. To me, the landing on the moon is that event that will fundamentally change how they look at the space. It is an iPhone of space, right? That means what applications will you build on top of that? Would it be simply bringing the moon rock back? Yeah. Why moon rock?
Why moon rock?
So moon rocks themselves are worth billions of dollars in my opinion because they can fundamentally replace the diamond industry. Diamonds are not rare on Earth. They were simply made the symbol of love in 1950s by De Beers by simply hoarding them, right? Moon has been a symbol of love forever. Right. So what if we simply change the marketing? When we bring the moon rock, we make them a commodity.
Right.
We say
everyone's wearing moon rocks now.
We say everyone gives someone a diamond. If you love her enough, you give her the moon. Don't promise her the moon.
Just give it to her.
Don't promise her the moon, give her the moon.
Wow.
And the girl gets up and says, Frank, I thought you loved me. Why are you giving me diamond? Right. And then when we start taking people to the moon, we change the definition of honeymoon. Honeymoon is about taking your honey to the moon, not honey Hawaii.
That's awesome. Wow. No, that's definitely interesting. I mean, so you're going to go and mine the moon and see what's there. Now
we know what's there.
You know what's there. How do you know what's there?
Because NASA has been mapping the moon for the last 60 years. We know exactly what is there. It's a 16 quadrillion worth of minerals, including rare earth elements, platinum grade materials, and helium-3. Helium-3 is the best resource for clean energy. There is no nuclear waste. After you use helium-3 in the fusion resource, there is no radioactive waste. Oh, wow. Now people say, well, we don't have a fusion resource today. But it's going, as an entrepreneur, you don't want to be where the puck is. You want to be where the puck is going to be. Right. We know in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have a fusion reactor. And then somebody's going to be looking around and say, hey, does someone have helium-3? And you raise your hand and say, got lots of helium-3.
We're on the moon over here, right here. We got the helium-3.
So my point is start thinking about what is possible. I mean, you start thinking that all of these things are possible and it's in your reach. It is not something that requires billions of dollars. You can bootstrap these projects. So I'm building another company called Wyome, which really Y is life, life of science of life, Wyome, right? And what we're doing is exactly what I described to you. Looking at your microbiome, looking at your metabolome, looking at your genome, looking at your virome, and saying, how can we allow you to live a wonderful life? You may think you're eating healthy, but your body may disagree with that, right? No two people are alike, and the same diet that may be good for you may be terrible for someone else. So just because you're eating a paleo diet doesn't mean you're eating healthy. Your body may completely disagree with that, or a gluten-free diet or anything else. You can, in fact, be personalized in terms of who you are and what's best for you. Now, coming back to it as an entrepreneur, I want each one of you to start thinking, what are the things I can do that, if successful, I can impact 1 billion people's life?
Wow.
If you can go out and impact 1 billion people's life, I guarantee you, you will create at least a $10 billion company. And never, ever be afraid to tell someone that what you do is profitable and it makes money. So don't ever be a social entrepreneur. That is the degrading term to an entrepreneur that says, you know what, I'm giving a consolation prize because you're such a shitty entrepreneur. Let me give you a consolation prize of a social entrepreneur, right? Right? Every entrepreneur is a social entrepreneur that solves the big problems, and when you solve a big problem, that is a social good. So go out and help 1 billion people and create a $10 billion company, and never be afraid to tell someone that I'm so profitable, I can go out and scale so fast that the whole world will know who I am, what I'm doing, right? And the last thing is, as on your path to success, just remember, it is a lonely journey. So enjoy your success, and when you reach there, remember to be humble, because the sure sign of success is the day you become humble. If you don't have a humility, then you're still trying to prove something to someone else or yourself. So Donald Trump is still trying to prove himself. I'm a $10 billion. The people who are actually worth $10 billion don't talk about money. Right?
True.
So I'm not talking about politics, but I'm saying is that humility is a sign of success. So go out and help someone else. When you are successful, send the elevator back down to bring the next person back up. Be a mentor. Help anyone you can. And the more you do, the more you will receive.
What's the ultimate success to you?
Ultimate success to me is if I can impact billions of life, and the only way I know is to help thousands of entrepreneurs around the world for them to make their dream come true, because each one of them is going to go out and impact millions of people.
Excellent. That's really great. I think we've got. Does anybody have a chance to? We got some mics over here. Let's just do a few questions. Okay. I know we're a little bit over time, but I want to just make sure people had a chance. Anybody have any questions they want to ask, Naveen?
If you don't have a question, we can always do monologue. You know that.
Yeah, I know that. I know that.
Anybody?
Anybody have a question for Naveen?
I guess not.
I have a question.
Okay.
This has been kind of circling in my brain the whole time knew I was going to talk to you. Now, you mentioned that NASA has mapped the moon. Yeah. There's conspiracy theory about the moon being made of cheese. There's conspiracy theory about it having life. What are your thoughts on all those different ideas?
So first of all, moon is a sister planet of Earth.
Yeah.
It is really was formed after a massive collision in the early days of the Earth formation. All I can tell you is there is so much. If you keep believing it's made of cheese, I'm the only one who's going to be owning all the material from there. Right?
Okay, so that one's ruled out. What about potential other life?
So one of the things Frank was asking me about, what the latest news, we became the first and the only company that have a permission to land on the moon.
Ever? Right, let's hear it for that.
Land, and we got the law changed. The law of the land now says anything that we bring back from the moon, we get to own it. And that law was signed by President Obama in December of last year. So imagine that.
Wow.
So we got, as an entrepreneur, we did not say, we have no permission. We were never going to get the permission to land on the moon. We have no rights to bring the stuff back. Guess what? We got everything changed. As an entrepreneur, you cross that bridge when you get there, and once you cross the bridge, you burn the bridge behind you, so because there is no going back. You keep moving forward.
Had anybody ever tried to do that before? Were you the first to even
Nobody
bring it up?
ever
Hey,
dreamed.
we're on the moon.
Nobody ever dreamed that they could go to the moon, so there was no procedure. There was no department that said, apply for going to the moon here.
Moon permit, right here, yeah.
So we had to go to everyone. We went to NSA, and they say, you know what? We could tell you the 10 reasons why you can't do that. And even if you can solve every single issue that we have, we still have no right or no, it's not in our charter to say yes.
Right.
We can say no, but we can't say yes. We went to NSA, we went to State Department, we went to every single department.
What about other countries? Do they think that there
So
should
actually
be like
so finally we went to White House and we got the permission, and every department came together to make it happen. It is under, so you ask me why, what right does United States have to give you the permission?
Right, yeah.
Do you need permission from China and Russia? So the interesting thing is, there is something called international planetary treaty. Let me say no country can own it, but the countries have to work together in the non-interference way. And a US company, when we launch, we are under jurisdiction of United States as if we are the United States.
Oh, wow.
Right? And
You're like an ambassador to the United States.
We are not only ambassador, we are a superpower, and then we are negotiating with the United States in terms of what rights each one of us have. To give you a really fun example, they told us, would you consider not landing or disturbing the Neil Armstrong's footsteps?
What did you say?
They cannot say that you cannot do that because they have no right. They don't own the moon.
And they don't own the steps. Yeah,
they don't own the steps.
Right.
We told them, we'll be more than happy, but would you consider giving us the same reciprocal non-interference treaty? So when we are on the South Pole looking at all the water that we want to control, would you not only make sure that it's you don't interfere with us, you make sure no one else can interfere with us?
There's water.
It's water on the moon.
Wow.
So if we can control that, we control the land, right? So imagine if when we are there.
So basically waterfront property.
Waterfront property. If you own it, and you have the might of the United States to make sure that no other country can come there, I think that's a pretty cool stuff.
Okay, so here's a question, though. It's a little bit out there, but think about this. There were certain explorers that came over in the Mayflower and whatnot, and they came to what is now the United States, and basically took it over and extended and extended. Are there any?
What about the people there?
Well, that's one, and then the other thing is, are you thinking maybe we could create another country? Like, I don't know.
So interesting thing is, people talk about living on the Mars, right?
Yeah.
I think the moon is a better first step, even if you want to live on the Mars. So think about it, the same set of problems, high radiation, high temperature things.
Yeah.
And between you and I, you'd rather be a lunatic 3 days away than be a Martian 6 months away, right? I'll be a lunatic all day.
That's a good point.
Right. But the beauty is, people talk about the short term. Oh, wait a sec. Human body is not designed to live on radiation. How will we make that happen?
Right.
They forget that nature has already solved that problem. We find bacteria that's living in the radioactive waste. So not only they thrive in the radiation, they use the radiation as an energy source. So imagine if, how many of you know about technology called CRISPR? Okay.
Few, yeah.
So CRISPR is a genetic editing technology that can allow you to edit your own DNA.
Wow.
So imagine if you can take this radioactive thrive gene from bacteria and modify your DNA, and now not only you're radioactive proof, you don't need to eat the pizza anymore. You just say, bring me the more radiation, baby.
Oh man, wow.
Right.
Has anybody else thought of that before? That's just hanging out? No? Okay, one other question here. Yep. I know that we're a little over, so we're going to have to wrap soon.
So, quick question. We have a lot of entrepreneurs here, and something I'm really curious about. You're doing something very bold, very new, disruptive. What are your recommendations or advice for failure and error recovery?
Yeah.
So as I mentioned that, there is no such thing called a failure. You don't fail. Your ideas may or may not work. So the entrepreneurship is not about starting a company. Entrepreneurship is simply experimentation. The more experiments you can do in the shortest amount of time is the more successful you're going to become. That means get the idea, bring the prototype, and get out if it's not the right thing, and simply keep iterating and reiterating on top of that. So it's all about experimentation and as little amount of effort it takes to prove the concept that it is going to work or not work. So I would say, first of all, starting a small idea is just as hard as big, so may as well dream big. May as well do something really, really massive that if you succeed, at least you have a great company and something you can be on the cover of Forbes someday.
That is I think that's a good way to end it. I know we're a little over time. I think I could sit here for hours talking about all of the questions I have about the moon. Are you going to be around a little bit? Do you have?
I'm here, actually. So yeah, so if we can, instead of listening to the next session, meet me outside and we can have a better conversation.
Wow. All right. Let's hear it for Naveen Jain.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.